Good morning. My name is Lisa Uematsu. I'm the treasurer for 33rd District PTA. Welcome to our audit refresher course. We're so glad that you've joined us for training so that you can get all your information you need in order to conduct your audits. Just a few housekeeping tips about this meeting. We will be sharing video and our panelists will be speaking. So we ask that all participants please mute yourself during the presentation. Feel free to put questions in the chat section and the panelists will review the questions and answer the questions either during the presentation in the chat box, or we may just save it and then answer it live. We'll be sharing video segments that's actually taken from our fall training. And that covers the basics of the PowerPoint presentation, the file that we sent you. The other parts can serve as reference material. But after each video segment, we're going to try and go more into detail and answer as many of your questions as possible. One of our goals here at 33rd District PTA is to increase our avenues of communication with our members. The finance team's contact information is on the second page of the PowerPoint presentation. And then PTA, 33rd District PTA has a variety of social media accounts, including Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Our training team today, besides me, is Stephanie Dickinson, 33rd District PTA Auditor, and Emi Morimoto, 33rd District PTA Financial Secretary. And so I guess we'll go ahead and get started with our first video. If you want to follow along on the PowerPoint slides that we sent out, this video segment covers slides 3 through 6.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to our audit training. We're going to talk about how to conduct a financial audit. And it's really to reasonably ensure the integrity of the financial data and safeguard PTA assets. So it's a little bit a level of assurance that things are being done correctly and transparent to the association. And we want to make sure that all the government taxes are filed. So this is the purpose, just to make sure that everything's being done correctly. Next slide, please. The audit timeline, as in your unit bylaws, there's a mid-year at December 31st and then the end of the year, June 30th. But there may be some in between, and that would be if a check signer is removed or added or a bank account is closed. And also with PayPal, Square, any of those e-commerce, there should be a separate audit prepared for each one of those. Next slide, please. Check with your unit bylaws to make sure of who can conduct the audit. It would be the auditor may be elected and serve on the board, or if they're not elected and they're appointed and approved by the association in the fall, then they would not be a member of the board. So check those bylaws. The auditor must not be a check signer or related by blood, marriage, or cohabitation with anyone on the financial team. And if the auditor is not qualified, which we'll talk about in a minute, a review committee will have to be assembled. The outgoing auditor, which is at this time right now, should be doing the June 30 audit for your units. Okay. The independence of the auditor is of utmost importance. And that's why I've got that in capital letters and bold, because that is very important. The auditor keep and independence and an open mind. Next slide, please. A qualified accountant. This is an insurance requirement that the auditor who performs the audit has to be qualified, such as a CPA or someone who's been trained or licensed to conduct audits and or review accounting records. If you do not have a qualified accountant, then a review committee is needed to be ratified at the association meeting. So they're appointed by the board and approved at the association meeting. And this is an insurance requirement. And it shall be composed of the auditor and at least one other member of the unit. And it's been asked that the council auditor may be the review committee of a unit if they cannot find a review committee. And then the review committee may specify the scope of work of that committee, seek input from the board, because the insurance company did not specify the scope of work. For the purpose of the audit, we said that it was to review compliance with PTA approved policies and procedures and reveal areas of weakness. And why is this so important, these two things? It's because if areas of weakness and non-compliance is not addressed, it may lead to mismanagement of funds. And this is one of the major reasons for units to be disbanded. Should be noted also that mismanagement of funds does not mean a personal benefit was gained by anyone, but that funds are being spent not in accordance with approved policies and procedures. So we want to, as auditors, make sure that we do our part to reasonably ensure the financial health of the unit. The next two, ensuring that the wishes of the association are being implemented and ensuring transparency of board actions to the association and to protect board members. And the second reason why units are disbanded is for lack of leadership. And so these two purposes really lead to whether people join the PTA or not as leaders. So volunteers would be more apt to volunteer if they know that, yes, the association made these decisions, it's very transparent and clear. They're not wondering, why are we doing this? We didn't agree with this. And so transparency, wishes of the association will invite more people to volunteer and as leaders of your unit. And the fifth one was the external taxes. And the government's not shy to let you know if your tax returns are not correct. It is not your responsibility to review the tax returns, but only that they were submitted. So don't worry if they're correct or not. If they've been turned in, just check that box off. Okay, and there was the audit timeline that we went over. I cannot stress enough the independence of the auditor. You should not have any preconceived notions. What you're reviewing is in front of your face. It's whatever is submitted to you. And so you're not going to make any assumptions about the documentation. You're only interpreting the documentation that's in front of you, regardless of who the positions are or whatever. Okay. And the question of the qualified accountant, this is, like I said, an insurance requirement. And so the accountant can be a CPA or licensed or trained in the review of accounting records. Public sector is better, but private sector is fine too. If you don't have a qualified accountant, then a review committee is needed. The board must appoint the review committee members because the president, who ordinarily appoints, is a check signer. So the board would appoint the review committee members, and the association would have to ratify them or approve them as well. Okay, and the scope of work of the review committee is up to the review committee and the board. That was not specified by the insurance company. I would recommend that the review committee look at the report, the beginning balances. If there's any findings, recommendations, maybe look at those, make sure that they agree with those, but you are not expected to redo the audit.
Okay, and I guess I probably should mention that we had Flora Farzad. She's not actually with us during the training today, but she is part of the video. And so I want to give credit where credit is due. Flora Farzad is our tax and government filings consultant. So just to want to give an opportunity, does anyone have any questions about that segment of our training? Okay, if not, Emmy, you want to go ahead and proceed to the next video?
This is one of the 2 required main forms that you need to conduct your audits. Complete the list at the beginning of the audit to show what was received from the treasurer and the recording secretary. You can consult with the treasurer or secretary via email regarding items missing for the audit. Next slide. The remainder of the audit checklist may be viewed as questions to test the unit's compliance with established PTA policies and procedures. When checking off the items as you go along, they'll be rather helpful instead of waiting till the end to review them. The order in which the questions are answered at the discretion of the auditor is based upon the personal preference or the filing system of the unit treasurer books, such as your month end by document or your different type of reports like treasury reports. Attached are the samples of the cash verification forms, the authorization forms, treasury report, bank statement reconciliation, and ledger report, which must be reviewed in accordance to the audit program. All the financial data is the same, just put into different formats. Important is that the auditor does not make any corrections to the documents while conducting the audit.
As far as financial documents, one may think that minutes and bylaws are not financial documents and shouldn't be included. So we wanted to make sure that we inform you how minutes and bylaws are needed. The minutes express the wishes of the association. So we have to make sure as auditors that expenditures are approved in accordance with the wishes of the association. And how do we know what those wishes are? Minutes should include approval of payments, release of funds, the programs that are approved, the budget that's approved, and also the election. The minutes must cover the election, and we need to know that that election took place, and there is actually a board. And treasury reports are presented. So we want to make sure that those are in the minutes also. And so that's why the minutes are so important for us, as auditors, to review those, to make sure that they are transparent and the association is getting all of the information that they need. Also, the bylaws, and we want to review the bylaws because some units may collect membership fees like $10, but their bylaws only allow $8. And so that's a major finding, and you wouldn't know that unless you had the bylaws. Also, the bylaws indicating the meetings that you should have. Board meetings should be every month, but association meetings may not be, so that should be specified in your bylaws, and you need to make sure that they're holding meetings in accordance with the dates that are in those bylaws. It also indicates check signers who may sign the checks, is specified in there also. So you want to make sure no one is signing checks that are not included as authorized check signers in the bylaws. Also, you have your meeting quorums in the bylaws, as well as the founding year. If you apply for a raffle permit, that founding year will be in your bylaws also, and it will also indicate if you're incorporated or not. So there's a lot of information in the bylaws that is required for you to review as the auditor. As far as the audit checklist, the first part of it are the items which are required. I would tell you to as soon as you receive the information from the treasurer or the unit, that you check that off right away. You may take some time to get to the audit, but I've had a lot of experience where they say, I gave that to you, no, you didn't. And there's, kind of a chain of custody there. And so you want to make sure you check off the documents that you get and make sure that there's an agreement there for the chain of custody of the documents. The last part of the audit checklist is really your audit program. This is more of an internal control review, testing compliance. It's not really an audit in accordance with GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles. So these are the steps that should be taken. You should check off, that things are being done correctly. This is about 90% of the treasurer is taught in their treasury training that they have to do. So this is a great checklist for the treasurer also to make sure that they're doing things correctly.
Okay, so we have a question in the chat. Stephanie, did you want to address that?
Yes, I do see the question about if they currently don't have any paperwork, checkbook access, and anything, then can they come back to the recording? Yes, we will have the recordings up on the website. Correct, Lisa, so we can send them out to them to refer back to at a later
Yes.
time. Did I miss another question?
No, that's the
Oh,
only
okay,
one we
good.
have so far.
Yes,
Okay. And
yes,
then
absolutely. And you can,
I think
go ahead,
the
Lisa.
fall one is already posted too. so-
correct. Yes, it is up and running if you need to refer back to it.
Okay. Well, why don't we take a closer look at the audit checklist, and then Emmy, you want to share slide 10? I don't know if you can see that. It might be easier to look if you've printed out your PowerPoint at home. Oh, lovely. Okay, so I just want to give you an opportunity to take a look at that and see if you have questions about what any of these items means.
Lisa, I have a question.
Yes.
For the bank reconciliations, could it be the one in the back of the bank statement, or do we need to make a special bank reconciliation form?
Steph, you want to?
I would suggest that you actually made a bank consideration form and you
Okay.
attach it into your monthly report, which is actually what is required.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, yeah. Any other questions about any of these items that are listed that should be in every treasurer's records? The video did explain why certain things that don't seem like financial records, like the bylaws and the minutes, why those are necessary too. Everything else seems pretty straightforward as far as being financially related. But if no one has any question, oops. You see that, Steph? Someone's asking if there's a bank reconciliation form template.
I believe there is. I am sorry. I don't have the correct answer for that, but I believe I did see that on there.
And actually, I was
And if
wondering,
not, we can send it to you.
okay, Stephanie, I was wondering is it possible, Teresita was referring to that sort of boilerplate form that is on a lot of the back of a lot of bank statements. Would it be possible to, if they use that and then just make a copy of it separately to file, or is that not sufficient?
Well,
Because that one is signed
I-
anyways by another, I mean, because
Right.
you do it and you sign it, but then also you have the committee signing on it to make sure that it was done
Okay.
correctly.
I guess if everybody is signing off on it, I guess that would be okay. I just know with being in the computer, everything is kind of automatically generated and your totals typically match. Lisa, what do you think about that?
Since I've not really ever had the audit hat on, I'm
Yeah.
reluctant.
Well, I'm on like the treasurer side of it, since you are the treasurer of it,
Mhm.
would that be acceptable? I know for us, ours is a computer generated and it's operating
Yeah.
and going. So
So yeah, since we use my PTEZ, I'm
Yeah.
more inclined to use that, because then it'll do the math for you.
yes, that's what
So,
that's my thought as well, because it's not as easy to make a mistake like that.
mhm.
I would say that using the computer generated one is better. We can probably get that up and running. But I guess last resort would be to use the back of the bank statement. But again, that is manually done. So I know it's not an exact answer. Well, I'm just gonna say I'm more comfortable with a computerized one. And then we send it off to everyone, have it signed and reviewed. But if you need to use the other one, then by all means, at least it's being done.
Okay, then we have a question. Do I have to proofread all the minutes?
So as you should definitely read the minutes so that when you're performing your audit, that you can verify that those expenditures were approved and paid for in according to the association and executive board. So you definitely need to peruse through them. I know that sounds like a lot, but that's the only way to verify another way. Okay.
Okay.
Are there any more questions?
Let's see. So looks like someone needs a little bit of clarification about exactly what a bank reconciliation is. She's asking if it's the monthly bank statement, which it isn't. So I don't know if you want to try and explain. It's kind of hard to explain.
Amy, do you have one up in that we can show here as we explain it to them? Because it is a little bit different than the.
Go to slide 16.
There you go. It is a little bit different than just your treasurer report. So it is the same information. It's just in a different format. And you have your beginning, how much your deposits in and out, and then you break it down again. And you put your bank statement balance on it, and you do anything outstanding, and you've completed it. So this balance should match your treasury report every single month. And it's just really another version of a treasury report.
So basically, if there's a difference in your ending balance between your treasury report and your bank statement, the bank reconciliation is the process of figuring out why there's a difference. A lot of times it's checks that haven't cleared yet. So that's what that process is. And then, so yes, if you use My PTEZ, in addition to generating the treasury reports and stuff, there is a module for bank reconciliation. So someone's asking, how do we get all these records? Is the auditor who's asking. So it should be actually.
Your records should be coming from your treasurer, and in your monthly folder should have your bank statement, your reconciliation, your payment authorization form with all of your receipts, your minutes, anything pertaining for that month. So it should come from the treasurer.
Okay, and then someone's asking, what is the finished product that we will be presenting? Is it just these checklists, or is it a copy of all the documents that I will have to review? And actually, that's kind of coming up. So,
yes, that's coming up.
Okay. Someone also asked, should we be reconciling monthly or quarterly?
As a auditor, you as a treasurer should be reconciling monthly. As an auditor, you should be performing these audits twice a year, and that is for periods July 1st through December 31st, and then for periods January through June.
Okay, and then there's a question of when is the due date, and I'm not sure whether she means the due date of the records to the auditor or the due date of when the audit should be finished.
I would say that your audit should be finished for like this upcoming period of July through December, should be finished by February. That gives them a month to reconcile December and make sure everything is in order, and then get it turned over to the auditor. For the January through June, I would say that should probably be due no later than August.
Can you repeat those dates for us, please? Sorry.
For your audit due for, sorry, we have some background noise right now, sorry. for your audit due for July through December, due by February, and the January through June, I would by August.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
And someone's asking where to find the checklist, and a lot of these forms are available on capta.org.
You can just type in the form in which you're looking for on cpta.org, and a lot of them have fillable forms right in there, and you can just download it and fill it in.
All righty. And then someone that had a question regarding an outsourced auditor, go ahead and clarify.
Okay, I hope you can hear me. So I believe last year was the first time we were using an outside auditor, at least we had the option to. And my particular school chose to do that, to have an outside auditor. So I wanted to get clarification on what it is that I would do as the PTSA auditor versus the outsourced auditor.
I guess maybe you can clarify if you're the PTA auditor, why was there the need for an outside auditor?
We were told to. This is what the organization actually required us. I was in a training just like this last summer that we were told that auditors needed to be outside of the PTSA.
No, I think where the confusion comes with that is that if you are not a certified accountant, then you just have to check another box on the audit form and then have an audit review committee look over the audit before it is presented. So you do not have to go to an outside agency to have your audit performed.
Okay, but if we don't want to use an audit review committee, I think that's probably the reason why our school chose not to. Instead of having a whole bunch of other people having to review it, we chose to have an outside agency. So maybe other people aren't doing it that way, but I guess I wanted to find out what my role would be versus the outside agency.
So then was the thought that the outside auditor would act like your review committee? Because I'm not sure why you'd want to pay someone, an external person, to just look over your work. So.
May I make a comment?
Sure. go
So,
ahead.
sorry. So I'm a new treasurer.
Mhm.
And for me, I don't know how to do any of this. And so for me, I would ask to have an outside auditor do it to make sure that it's correct, because our whole board is very new versus having the responsibility of it being wrong for some reason. So, and maybe that's why they chose to do that. I mean, yes, you have to pay for it, but if you don't have an experienced team, then maybe that's the reason someone chose to do that.
You also have, go ahead.
I was just gonna say another reason too is just the time commitment, having, since it's not any longer one auditor, now you have a committee. So you're using up the time of 4 or 5 people. And we just kind of value the time of our PTSA members. So it's less costly, I would say, to pay someone, but go ahead.
I was just gonna, the other option is if without paying an outside agency, you can always have us at 33rd audit your books to go over that as well. But I agree with Lisa. I'm not sure what your role would be after the audit has been performed by the outside agency, other than it being just presented to the association. Lisa,
Okay,
do you have
thank you.
any other comments or?
Well, I would just also remind everyone that the fall training that we had for the audits is already on the website, 33rdpta.org/training. So that's something you can review. And I think the scope of the review that the review committee does it's not like they have to redo the audit over themselves. They're just taking a look at your results and, just making sure that there's nothing missing or whatever. So it's not like they're having a committee of like another 2 people is going to triple the work. Basically, they should just be able to look over it, make sure everything makes sense. I see that Blanca has her hand up. You still have a question?
Hi, yes, good morning.
Good morning.
I had a quick question. I was glancing over some of the previous treasurer's work because they were handed to me. And I quickly noticed that there was a discrepancy in the date of deposits. For example, money was counted on a Monday or a Wednesday, and then the deposit wasn't made until the week later. And I, being a new treasurer, being the new person, I asked about her, and they said, we got sick or because of COVID, or everything was COVID related. Is that a reasonable excuse, or how do I note that the deposit was a couple of days late?
So I do think that that's something that should be made note of, that if it's not done, within the next day or 2 of receiving the receipts, that's something you do make a note of, because, regardless of what happens, it is something that you want to make sure you're doing your best. And even if there is COVID, then you still want to make sure, like, okay, well, how do we work around COVID? What's the best way to handle our incoming money? So I think it is something where it is worth including it, as an audit finding. But I'm sorry, and so you said that you're the treasurer, and so you noticed this, but it wasn't.
No, sorry. I asked the previous treasurer.
Oh, okay.
To me, I was sorry, I was a misspoke.
Okay.
And so I was like, wait, I'm new to this, but I know that deposits are supposed to be within 24, 48 hours max. And so I was like, well, what's going on? What happened? And their first thing was, it's COVID. Like, and to me, I was like, I don't understand. If you couldn't do it, why can anyone do it? Like, how am I supposed to do that? Because it happened. It looks like I literally just started glancing at them, and I'm like, this is often. So I didn't know if that's something that is a reasonable excuse for, like, putting it on does it need to be on the report? Or, I mean, obviously the report, the deposit was made for the correct amount and everything, nothing happened. But I was just shocked that there was so many days in between.
Well, it is a finding, and then, you present your findings. This is what I noticed. And you're not saying, oh, this is, that there's an excuse or there's not an excuse. It's like, this is what I see. This differs from PTA policy. So I think it's worth including. You present, and you end up presenting that list of findings to your board. And, if someone wants to say, make excuses, whatever, they can do that at the board meeting, but I think it is something that the board should be aware of.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I have one more question. Also, with the whole COVID thing, I also noticed that the bank reports, they were supposed to be initialed by 2 people. Some of them weren't, and they were like, well, it was COVID. Like, you can't go to someone else's house and verify that I got this. And so I was like, oh, okay, that one makes sense, because we were supposed to stay home. But is that something too that I need to know? Because I literally went by the checklist, so it was new to me. I was like, oh, no, and I'm like, oh man, I'm thinking, I don't want to lose friends.
That would also be a finding, but again, you could probably have scanned it and had them sign it and sent it back.
Send it via email or send it hard mail. I'm just, in case this were to ever happen again, I want to make a note like, hey, this is what we're supposed to do.
Yeah, like maybe through like Adobe or email and just have them send, sign it and send it back to you
Okay.
if they weren't supposed to be together.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Appreciate
You're welcome.
Okay, Teresita, I hope your question's quick.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay, what is the time frame for the audit? Like when the auditor receives the paperwork, how long should the auditor take to do the to turn back the papers? Because I know that they turn in the checkbook and all of those documents that you might need for month to work. So what would be a good time? Like if we're turning all the paperwork in August, when does the auditor supposed to return it to us?
I would return it, I mean, under a week's time, maybe,
Okay.
week and a half, just depending on their complete schedule. I mean, something could come up, but since you only have one school to audit, I would think a week or week and a half should be okay.
Okay, does the review committee have to be anybody in the board? Could they be anybody in the board? Should it be anybody in the association?
It needs to have an association member as well, and it cannot
Okay.
be treasurer or president, and cannot be check signers.
Correct. And
You do
then
need to have,
a treasurer cannot run, like the council treasurer cannot run the audit for the council. I mean, for the units, can they?
Well, they're not a signer for
they're
the,
not a signer.
they're not a signer for the, so are you asking if a council treasurer can be part of a unit review committee?
Or run the audits?
No, you, so she's asking like for her council if,
Yeah.
Right.
we
if
don't
their
have an
treasurer
auditor-
was acting as a treasurer, I mean, acting as an auditor.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily see a problem
Mm-mm.
with that.
As long as, it's as long as you're not a check signer.
Right.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
All
You're
righty.
welcome.
We're going to, let's see. Emmy, if you can just go to slide 13. This isn't reviewed in the videos, I don't think, but this is pretty important because it's got the procedure, sort of a flow chart of the approval process. So basically, you want to make sure that the records that you have pretty much prove that any of the expenses have gone through this approval procedure. And I think, let's see, Emmy, why don't we go on to the next video? This next video is going to cover slides 15 through 18.
This is a sample of what your monthly treasurer report should look like. This example is from November of 2019. As you can see, it shows all the income coming in, your deposits, your bank adjustments, and then all of your expenses as well. You need to list all of your checks and on this one too, bank adjustments going out. This treasury report should account for everything that happens during the month. So this one should be from the beginning of November until the end. So it should include everything, including outstanding checks. This form is a sample of the bank reconciliation report, which your treasurer should be reconciling to the bank statement every single month. This shows all of your income and coming in and your expenses going out, along with your outstanding checks, and your balance at the end should balance with your bank statement. Once this report is done, then two people need to sign off on it, review it, and sign it off. Okay, this is a sample of the ledger. This is prepared each month in conjunction with a treasurer report and the bank reconciliation. On this form, you are breaking down each expense and your income into the different classifications that is used for the purposes of filing your taxes. This is a second required form when completing the audit process. This is a sample of the audit report. While this sample is a little bit unusual where it only covers 1 month, Your typical audit report covers July 1st through December 31st and January 1st through June 30th. This audit is for periods covering November 1st through November 30th, 2019, covering checks 3075 through 3078. Your first line where it says balance on hand should be your ending balance from the previous month. Your receipt should be all income that was received during the reporting period. You're going to total that. And then from there, you're going to take out your disbursements for the total reporting period, which should give you an ending balance, which should match your treasury report from the last period in this audit time. Then you're going to pull your bank statement, which is from your bank reconciliation, and put in your bank balance on the next line. You're going to add in any deposits that you have not made or have not been accounted for on the bank statement. Then you're going to add in your uncleared checks, the check number and the amount, and total them and put it in the uncleared column. And when you subtract your bank statement balance minus your uncleared items, your balance should match your treasury report balance on hand in the section above. If you notice the asterisks, both of those need to match when this audit is complete. The next step is you will put in any findings in which you have found in your audit and check the box whether you have no recommendations or it's correct with substantial recommendations and you attach them, or partially correct, or your audit is incorrect. You need to date your audit the date that you've completed it, then submit it to your audit review committee. Once that's done, then you're going to have your executive board adopt it and date it, and then bring it to the association, which is the last step. Please make sure that you're signing your audit and checking whether you are a qualified accountant or not, and then have the review committee sign it on the bottom to make it a valid audit.
Steph, did you see this question here? Is there any reason that people can't do a monthly audit report and then just do one final one, which sort of, I guess, consolidates all 6 months?
That would require your treasurer to hand you over their books every single month for you to have them to do an audit every month. I know in theory that sounds really, really, really nice. Then you just compile it. But that would be something you would work with your treasurer to be honest with you. I think that would be a little cumbersome for me. But I don't know, Lisa, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I do think it requires some coordination. So
Yeah.
Maybe if you're a low activity unit, then it might be good to do it on a monthly basis where you know, if you're just looking at a month's worth of records, maybe it won't take you too long.
Right.
And you'd be able to get it back before any checks need to be issued or whatever. So yeah, it's a possible thing, but it kind of depends on your own unit and the activity that's going on. Okay.
You know, if your treasurer is following that checklist up on the top of the audit checklist, that's almost like they're doing a pre-audit every single month. So when those folders are handed over, it should just like all flow together. So that might help too.
That's true. The audit checklist is a good thing for any treasurer to have. Because a good friend Flora says it's like having a cheat sheet, right, for the exam. So,
yes, it is.
Okay. Tammy, can you go to slide 18? So this is the audit report. So I just kind of take a look at it closely, either on the screen or on your PowerPoint. And do you have any questions about any of the fields that are on there? Because now's a good chance to ask our district auditor any questions now instead of at the last minute.
Okay, well, I do want to point out on here, if you're looking closely, one of the main important parts is you need to be able to check a box, whether it's correct with recommendations, correct with attached recommendations, et cetera, et cetera. But one of those boxes must be checked. And I realize it's not checked on our sample. So. Is there any other questions on this form? Oh. Lisa, can you get the next question, please? I have to step away for a
Okay,
second.
sure. Okay. Louis, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm taking over as a replacement auditor for somebody, and we were told that we needed an audit to reflect when they chose to exit being an auditor. And so that's not like a month-end date or anything. So I'm just wondering how that's supposed to work with like many of these reports that, you know, are automatically built for month end, but this person didn't leave kind of at month end. And so like the bank
Right.
statements and other things don't line up that way.
Right. Now, this is something I may need to double check with Stephanie when she gets back, but I don't know that an audit needs to be done as of when you took over from the old auditor because there's no check signing involved. Now, if a check signer is changed, like maybe a treasurer resigns and another treasurer comes in, same thing with the president, then yes, then you want to do an audit as of when that check signer left before the new check signer starts signing off on stuff.
Okay.
So granted, there's still your background question of, well, what happens if it happens in the middle of the month? And I'm going to say, I'm not an auditor, so I'm not going to answer that. But for your specific situation, I don't think that that's a concern because the auditor is not a check signer.
Okay. That's okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. All righty. If there are no other questions on any of the stuff we've gone over so far, Emmy, you want to go ahead and do the next video on audit findings and recommendations, and this covers slides 22 and 23.
The auditor's finding and recommendations are the auditor's opinion based solely upon the documentation presented for the audit, as well as pertinent, as deemed by the auditor, written communication during the process. Judgment may be exercised to report a finding based upon the totality of a review or a pattern. It is important to not personalize your audit or just state your clear findings. Your report should be clear and concise, as well reflect the total independence of the auditor. For example, in a finding of check number 105 in the amount of $65 dated October 13, 2019 was not supported by receipts. You would state that the recommendation is that all check authorization forms must include the documentation such as receipts or invoices which supports the amount of the check requested. In the audit approval process, the auditor may present the audit report as well as the findings and their recommendations to the president and the financial team for discussion prior to submission to the executive board. The audit findings and recommendation report, in addition to the audit report form, must be presented to the executive board for approval. The audit report only may be presented to the association for approval, and the findings are presented to the executive board. Once that has been completed, you're going to submit to the next level of PTA. If the auditor is not available to present the audit, then a member of the review committee may do so. Financial officers should not present the audit to the executive board and association.
For the findings and recommendations, again, you want to make sure that you're demonstrating complete independence. You're just reading the documentation. You're not making anything up. And also, I like just to touch on judgment. We said that the purpose was to test compliance, make sure they're doing things right. And so I said in the totality of the process, if they like miss a signature somewhere, or there's something that's missed, but you're comfortable that the procedures are in place and being followed, and this was just like maybe a human error, I don't think that would raise to the level of a finding. You may mention it, but as far as making it a finding, I myself, and that's up to you, I would not do that, because there's more of a downside than an upside if you do that. That would be very discouraging to the treasurer if you found one thing that was wrong, and so it's up to your judgment. But if you're comfortable, procedures are in place and are being followed, I would just maybe mention it, but I wouldn't put it as a formal finding. That's my opinion. So as far as written communications with the treasurer, you may ask for things or whatever, but that's up to you also. You may just accept what they gave you. It's important to know that you're just reviewing the things that are submitted. It doesn't mean they weren't prepared, but they weren't submitted. So when you write an audit finding and stuff, you will say a treasury report for June was not submitted. You don't know that it was not prepared. So it's things like that and stuff. So I would limit the communication between the treasurer and the auditor during your audit. But if you do, it should be written. It shouldn't be over the phone. It shouldn't be texted. It should be in an email, so that you have an audit trail, as it were, of the communication between the treasurer and the auditor.
Okay, Steph, are you back?
I am back.
Oh, you're back. Okay.
I'm back.
Alrighty. So are there any questions regarding audit findings and recommendations? Alrighty, because if there's not, here's what we're going to do. We're going to present some examples of audit findings, and go ahead and put in the chat box whether you think this is an appropriate wording for the finding or an appropriate item to even include in the findings or not. So just you want to remember that the findings should be written in a positive but firm manner. It should be based on the documentation that's turned into you as the auditor for review, and it should reflect the independence of the auditor. So, Emmy, you want to go ahead and put that first one in the chat? Oh, there we go. The June 2021 Treasurer's Report was not prepared. So, anyone want to? Okay, so I'm taking those notes to mean that you don't think it's an appropriate response? Anyone else? Ah, very good. People were listening to Flora when she just said this thing. So yes, we just heard Flora say that you can't tell whether it was not prepared. All you know as an auditor was whether it was turned into you or not. Okay, and there's a question. Who do we go to if we have any questions with the audit process who is the point of contact at the council level? And you start with the council auditor because
Correct.
that's their
I'm
job
sorry.
to be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Emmy, you ready to put finding number 2 in the chat? Cash verification form dated January 8th, 2021 in the amount of $500 was not signed by a second counter. Is that an appropriate finding or not? Or is it appropriately worded, I should say, or not? Okay, Steph, what do you say?
I'd say that that is appropriate. So they were listening as well. It is not signed by a second signature. So let's make sure when in doing these audits, it is important to have 2 signatures on the cash verification.
And I like that this is very, very detailed. It referred
Very.
to specifically which cash verification form is missing that signer. So, okay, Emmy, number 3. Amy said the receipts for check number 2034 dated February 10th, 2021 in the amount of $325 were in the bungalow. Appropriately worded or not? And if you have detailed reasons why it's appropriately or worded or not, feel free to throw that in the chat too.
Okay, well, I'm gonna, oh, somebody did, there they come. Okay, the reason that it's not appropriate is because it was personalized. So you don't need to say that Amy said the receipts for the check number were not dated in the amount. You just need to state that the receipts for check number 2034 dated were for 2025 were missing.
Yes.
So good job answering the question.
Yes. So yes, there's a couple of points there that, oh, you don't need to put that hearsay in there for this particular one. And also, yes, you don't need to refer to people by name. If there's something where you need to refer to a specific person, you can go ahead and refer to their office, like, oh, you know, the treasurer did not blah, 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 whatever. So, okay, number 4. The unit collected $10 for membership dues during the audit period. The bylaws state that the approved membership dues are $8. Appropriately worded or not? Okay, good. I like it when more people play.
Yes, the answer is yes. The unit collected $10 when it's only approved in the bylaws for $8. That is an appropriate statement.
And that's part of why a seemingly non-financial document as the bylaws needs to be accessible to the auditor. Alrighty, number 5. The April 2021 bank reconciliation was not signed. I told them before that this requirement needed to be implemented and it was not done. If not appropriate, then if you have any ideas why it's not appropriate, that would be great.
Okay, again, yes, this is not appropriate. It became personalized when you stated in there, I told them before this requirement needed to be implemented and it was not done. So the better statement would be, please go back through and correct the findings.
Or if it's a repeat finding from, maybe this is something that you as an auditor had mentioned at the previous audit, then
Correct.
you can refer to that, oh, this was a recommendation from the previous audit and you guys need to do better. Well, no, that's personal.
No.
No. But you just say, to make it clear that this is not something new or unusual. But yes, you just state, just impersonally, just objectively, this was brought up in a previous audit. Okay, so yes, good answers. And someone's asking how to find out who their council auditor is and their contact information. I would say your president should be able to help you with that.
Your council president, you should reach out to them.
Yes, or your unit president can tell you, or find out for you, because your unit president should be attending council meetings. So they should have a sense of, even if they don't know who the council auditor is, they should know who they can ask to find that information for you. Okay, let's see. I think there's one more finding.
Okay.
The association minutes do not report the release of funds for the carnival. Appropriately worded or not? Yep. It's pretty much just the facts there.
Yep. Yeah. Yes, that is an appropriate statement.
So yes, you just want to make sure that any of your findings are just factual and based on what information was given to you by the treasurer. Okay. Are there any questions? Oh, bam, yes, there's a question there. Okay, we have discovered errors in the previous auditor's reports dating back to 2018. Do we need to redo their audits? You want to figure out what the correct number is. Like if you're working with an incorrect starting balance, you definitely want to do enough work to figure out what your starting balance is for this current period that you're supposed to be auditing. I don't know that you need to go back and fix everything that was done wrong before you, because wow, what a disincentive that would be. Right. So
can I come in and give some context? We don't mind going all the way back if we have to do so. We're not able to, there are two of us working together on this, and we're not really able to move forward because we don't have complete ledgers from back in 2018.
Oh.
So we think we may have gathered some information over the weekend, but Aaron, do you want to chime in? But we don't have complete information going back, but we're trying to piece it together, and we're happy to do it if that's what we need to do.
Okay.
I think you should probably find a good starting point then and move forward.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking you wouldn't have to go that far back in order to figure out like whatever starting balance you would be going from. I don't know if there's other information that you want besides a good starting balance.
So December 2017's audit is accurate. We already figured that out. So we know that it begins with January to June of 2018. That's off. So we do know where our starting point would be. I think it's, Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's more of a, what would you do if you were in our shoes?
Well,
yeah, like you well, first of all, Crystal said we're happy to do it. We must
Happy?
do it, and we will.
Kind of my
Wow.
thing.
But because we don't suspect that anyone like did anything purposeful, it feels like there must be a simpler way to move forward.
See, normally because if you have certain downtimes during the course of your year, like maybe summer is really dead and there's no checks issued, whatever. So I would pick a point like maybe July 1st and of 2021. Okay, so you know what the bank statement balance is, and then you kind of maybe backtrack as far as, are there any outstanding checks? So maybe you go back 6 months, right? Just to see if all those checks that were written in the previous 6 months had cleared. And then, because once you get beyond that, things are stale dated. So hopefully none of those like really old checks are going to pop up and mess up your balance. So that's kind of what I would do as far as figuring out a good balance rather than going all the way back to 2018.
Right. Be daunting.
Do we need to inform council? Do we need to go any farther to let anybody know that we've discovered that there were errors? Like, is there anything else we should do?
I would probably notify council and just say, okay, this is what we're dealing with. And then you can get the credit for getting things back on track too, right?
Maybe just like a quick little recap of where you think it went awry, what went awry, and so on and so forth, just so we have a record of it here.
Right. And they may have some thoughts as far as how to proceed too. So, but yeah, I would say, going all the way back to the most recent good audit, when that was several years ago, a few years ago, that I think this other way is simpler, and hopefully it gets you to the correct spot. Because I don't know that even if you get more information, you still might not have everything complete in those 2018, 2019 years anyway. So if you go from where you are and you have like bank statements, whatever, then you can see like, well, what from the last 6 months is cleared, and what might be outstanding to mess up. And then you can adjust from the bank statement balance of July 1st to get what is probably going to be an accurate checkbook balance, a ledger balance.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And most likely that they don't interfere with taxes, right? That the amounts kind of, they have to match taxes as well, don't they? Like at the end of the period of the 630 would be the most important one, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
That the taxes are the same as the audit, correct? With the CTTR.
That's right. That's a good point. I don't know, Erin, is there something where you feel like it's going to affect the taxes? Like, is your unit more than 50,000 income?
We are more than 50,000.
Yeah. Well, I would say do what you can to get your correct starting balance for this period that we need to audit, and then worry about any fallout from the other stuff, because
Thank you.
Don't move taxes.
Okay, great.
I hope that helps.
How long does it take to do the audit? I'm asking because I want to make sure I have enough time.
Well, that would be determined by how much activity that your unit does and how well the records are kept in order. To me, no more than a couple of hours, I think, for a high profile school, unless there's an issue. If the treasurer has everything in order, it should be very, very seamless, and you just have to verify all the records and receipts and authorization forms and things like that. Does that help? Yes, okay.
Yeah, yeah, the answer is it depends.
Yeah, it does. It definitely does depend, and there's no exact time frame. So I think that somebody who does it all the time, so mine might go a little bit quicker, just because I'm used to the process. So I don't want to steer you down the wrong road.
Are there any more questions regarding how to write up findings or recommendations? Emmy, you want to toss up slide 25? This doesn't necessarily have to do with the procedure of doing the audit, but it might help you know kind of what to pay attention to and zero in on. So the last couple of pages of the handout has some stuff that you might want to, pay attention to if they happen. Should alert your spidey senses. And yeah, so if you have any questions about any of these, please throw them up in the chat there. And I think if Flora were here, she would say that mismanagement doesn't necessarily mean embezzling, although it can, but just mismanagement means maybe you're being sloppy or whatever. So in order to protect your assets, you do want to make sure that you're being on top of stuff and going according to procedure. And want to scroll to the next slide, Emmy? Stephanie, are there any of these that you want to jump on? And
Yes, I definitely number 4, which is that check signers must not sign blank checks. That to me it's very important. The check should always be written out to and how much it is before a check is signed by any signer. Very important.
Marcy, you want to unmute yourself?
Sure. So I've been looking a little bit about what to do, your question about audits and finding inaccuracies, previous inaccuracies. And so I believe, and I could be wrong because I'm not an auditor, that you should just put a paragraph, from what I've done a little bit of research, that a paragraph at the beginning of your audit stating the findings of the previous mistakes in the audit, just so that it's recorded in your current audit.
Okay,
at the very beginning, just saying, hey, this is what we found. We believe from this point on the audit to be correct, unless there are tax implications. And I don't know that because, like I said, I'm not an auditor. But if you put that paragraph kind of at the beginning, like, we've gone through some research, we found that these are the inaccuracies. We don't believe there to be any mismanagement of funds, just clerical errors. Put that at the beginning of your next audit. That should cover you. And unless there's just huge mismanagement of funds. But if it's small things, I believe that if you put that paragraph at the beginning, you're covered.
Right. And then that'll
Thank you,
help
Marcy.
future auditors if they kind of go back to yours and they want to know what was going on, at least
Right.
there's something that explains all that stuff from the years before.
Right. And I think that should help. And then that way you're covered. Your counsel will also see it, and everyone will know what happened and that they know that you caught it.
Okay, great. Thanks, Marcy.
Thank you.
All righty. Any other questions? I mean, here's the opportunity to pick the brain of the 33rd District PTA Auditor. She's a busy woman. Take advantage of her now.
Just to clarify, you do not run your audit in front of your treasurer or in front of the treasurer or anybody else in the that signs the checks?
Oh, is someone expecting you to do that? No, you don't
Yeah.
have to. You don't have to run it in front of the.
No,
treasurer.
it gets
Okay.
presented to the president and then the executive board, and then that is the process. You do not need to sit down and go over it with the treasurer first.
Okay, do they get to change or correct their mistakes before I present. I mean, that's done, right? Even
Done.
even if I found a mistake and I just I write down the letter and I say that these are my findings. They don't have. I mean, they can correct from then on, but not the not the past.
Correct. Yes, they can correct the findings in the audit. It doesn't change the audit. It just corrects it. Again, your findings are presented to the executive board only. They're not presented at the association meeting. So if the treasurer is worried about that, then these things will be handled through the executive board.
Okay, and then like, I mean, if there's like a signature, could they go back and sign, have the other, you know, like two signatures in the in the reconciliation, something that is, I mean, that's important, but not as important as the signatures in the checks, for example. Can they go back and sign it, or is it better not to touch anything? I mean, it's done. Start fresh from today on.
They can go ahead and correct it, but again, it doesn't change the audit. They can go ahead and sign it that it's been reviewed and corrected, and they can type a little recap on their own and attach it to the audit that it's been corrected as of and the date. Go from there.
Okay, okay,
But yeah,
thank you.
as an auditor, you found what you found.
Yes,
and-
and that stays.
Okay, okay. But I can write that it was corrected.
You can write it that it was corrected and just attached it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions? All righty. Well, thank you for joining us, and we hope that you learned some valuable information. For more information about PTA audits, you can visit our website, 33rdpta.org, and California State PTA's website, capta.org, or you can also contact the financial team, and like I said before, our contact information is on page 2 of the handout. If you have any additional questions or ideas for topics that you would like us to provide training for, please email ptatraining@33rdpta.org. That would be ptatraining@33rdpta.org. And thanks for coming.